Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6 o'clock and a quorum of members is present, so this work session of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby? Here. Mr. Helmer?
Here.
Ms. Konick? Ms. Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Seidel?
Here.
Ms. Spindler?
Here.
Mr. Zelinski?
Here.
Ms. Connick let me know she's unable to attend this evening. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance. For all who are able, please rise.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by posting the agenda at each district school, the district office, and the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. Copies of the agenda were forwarded to the Waukesha Freeman and the Journal Sentinel, which have filed requests for all public notices. So this evening, we have our work session, Unpacking the State Report Card. And we have Joe Schroeder with us from the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators. They'll provide an informational session related to unpacking the state report card.
Yeah, so obviously the board had set goals earlier this year, did a mid-year review, I believe it was at the last meeting. And one of the goals as far as learning on behalf of the board was digging into the district data more than we currently do. So, we do administrative presentations to the board throughout the school year. We actually have recently been working with Joe Schroeder over the course of the last 8-9 months now. Without further ado, Dr. Joe Schroeder combines impactful leadership experience in teaching and administration with a passion for leadership development. Before joining the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators as Associate Executive Director in 2012, Dr. Schroeder served 5 years as Superintendent of the Muskego Norway School District. Prior to this, Joe was the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services in the Elmbrook School District, Principal of Brookfield East High School, Associate Principal and Principal of Evansville High School, and English teacher at both Menasha and Parker, Arizona High Schools. During his 38 years in the field, Joe has been an award-winning teacher, principal, and superintendent. For example, WASDA selected him as both the 2025 Wisconsin Educator of the Year and as the 2011 Wisconsin Superintendent of the Year. Dr. Schroeder also received the 2010 OSSAW Distinguished Service Award for contributions to the profession. Furthermore, Joe led Muskego Norway Schools to Wisconsin Forward Award Mastery Level recognition in 2010, only the third K-12 school district to ever be so honored in this program of organizational quality based on the Baldrige criteria for performance excellence. Dr. Schroeder has 3 degrees from the University of Wisconsin, a BS in secondary education in English, an MS in educational administration, and PhD in educational administration. He also is a 2017 Learning Forward Academy graduate. Joe and his wife Annie continue a multi-year home renovation of their small farmstead in Waukesha County that is filled with all sorts of critters and which provides almost endless opportunities for lifelong fitness outside the gym, as well as abundant ongoing humility training. Joe and Annie are celebrating 38 years of marriage and the unfolding journey of parenting and now grandparenting their 3 adult daughters and families. So I'll hand it over now to Joe Schroeder.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. Good to be here with you. I'll just start with, I'm a Waukesha neighbor. I've been here for over 25 years. Fun fact, I actually got to hire Kelly as a teacher at Brookfield East years and years ago. Seems longer for me than you. You still look about the same. I've worked north and south of you for a bunch of years. Worked with people from here for lots of time. My kids went to Arrowhead. I live in KM now, if you will, in Delafield. My grandkids go to Pewaukee. You get the idea. I'm all around you here. So it's good to be here with you. It's great to be in Waukesha County. I'm not born and raised here, but I choose to be here and love the area, and I thank you for what you do in service to kids. There's a lot of things going well here. I'm here, I believe, because you have a goal of going deeper with understanding this, and I think I applaud you for that, because that's really important in your role of governance. I would also say, like 20 years ago, I had moved in my first year as assistant soup at Elmbrook for teaching and learning there. It was Educational Services was the name. And at the time, you know, the state had been looking at, you know, achievement, which of course matters a ton. We want to be high achieving. But we were we understood the limitations of that. So 20 years ago, we were looking at creating our own ways of looking at growth, particularly around kids who were our most marginalized students. And so just so you know, I'm going to be unpacking things that I've been thinking about and doing with folks for a long time. And Mosquito, Norway, before, you have now, the state has a multi-dimension scorecard. We created our own because we saw the value of that before the state did. So again, these are things I'm going to share that the state's been doing. There are things that go back to my training back in UW-Madison, and I was kind of viewed as, who's this crazy guy with these new ideas around here? But there are things I think that are valuable, I think that's been shown to be valuable. I hope that you can learn how those are going to be helpful for you to understand how they're here. And I'm really here to help you learn, but also really just to celebrate. You have a tremendous amount of wonderful things going on. So what we'll cover are three things. We're going to recover the highlights. So in case you're not quite tracking, there's lots of moving parts. You know, our state has spring assessments, and you know, mainly in the spring, throughout, but mainly in the spring. And then there's a lot of machinations, and then in November, those get released. So every November, you get the public release of your report cards. There's always a lag, right? So the most recent comprehensive scores you have are from a year ago. That's just the way it works. You receive them in November, like every district, but they go back to 24 or 25. So we'll look at that. We're going to particularly look at the ways, you know, your overall score is what people really pay attention to, usually 5-star, your 5-star district, 5-star schools, or what have you. But those come through 4 different priority areas, and you see them on the second in the diamonds. And then what this means and why it matters for my role, I'm at the point now where I'm like the old guy in the room always, and you know, so hopefully there's some wisdom that comes with that, and certainly some trying to be reflective about the experiences, and hopefully that'll add some insights and some value for you today. Let's start with just a few of the celebrations. I mean, the hard thing is to put this on one slide, and again, I just want to be thankful to be up here and share some of this with you. Yeah, you're the 9th consecutive year of having significantly exceeding expectations. That means you're a 5-star system. There are 363 K-12 districts in the state, and there's only 24 that have that. So if you do the math, you're in the top 7%. There's only 7% of the districts that have a 5-star rating. You've done it for 9 consecutive years. Rare air. First time ever this year that all 6 of your schools also are at that highest level of significantly exceeding expectations, 5 stars. So you have 7 units, 7 for 7. The district and all 6 schools are 5 stars. In the state, you're ranked 7th in the state of 363 K-12 districts. You'll notice below that there's a larger number because there's some K-8s mixed in and some 9-12s. But again, overall, I mean, again, you're in the top 2%, pretty much however you want to play around with it. And if at the bottom level there, the overall kind of, if you're a numbers person, it all gets computed into a single number. Like your 88.6 is high enough to get you to a 5-star level. And that's about 16 points higher than the average. Again, and just crushing it compared to the state. So those are some of your highlights. And then you get into the county. 72 counties in Wisconsin. This was your 4th grade civics study again. Remember, 72 counties in Wisconsin. 6 of the 24 districts, so a quarter of the districts in the state who are 5-star are in this county. Again, you are in, it's something I've known for years. It's partly why I choose to live here. This is the most high achieving county in the state for educational outcomes for kids. There's all ways we can look at that, but that's one of them, I would just say. So, and that you are 2nd in the county in the last, and again, it's a matter of tenths of points or on the overall score. I mean, that's a celebration for sure. And then just a few other things. Again, only other system in the county to have all its schools along with itself as a district at 5-star is Elmbrook. And this is the first year Elmbrook has had all their schools also there. So you're doing that together. Eisenhower has the highest overall score on accountability across those 4 areas in the county. And both of your high schools, again, both of your flagships are at a 5-star level. Again, what a celebration. I can't tell you how many systems would die to have the things you have here for your kids. And then lastly, and I think really important to my heart, because it's what you do for your kids who are most struggling, you lead the county in target group growth outcomes. So again, just a few things to highlight. I mean, it's a blessing to come here and talk to you about some of these things today. But let's dig into and get you a closer look, because what we're trying to do is help you, get that. That's the 20,000 foot level though, and it's really around celebration. So what makes up all that? What all feeds into it? So there's a thing called ACT. I'm sure you're familiar with that. In 1959, so probably older than anybody here was around, that's when the ACT showed up. It was an alternative to the SAT. The ACT stands for American College Testing. It is now, and for years has been, for decades at least, has been the most commonly taken college admissions test. Kids usually take it in junior year. If you have a junior, they're like stressed out about the ACT, right? And maybe take it again their senior year, but that's toward the end, and it's supposed to show how well they're ready for college. And it assesses 5 areas: ELA, that's English Language Arts, your reading, math, science, and writing. So that's what that is. The pre-ACT is for kids that are in grades 3 through 10, because there's been an effort around college readiness now for a couple decades. So now our kids also have what's college ready appropriate for 3rd graders to know versus 6th graders so you don't have to wait till 10th grade to see if kids were ready or not. DLM is dynamic learning maps. That's an assessment for your most significantly cognitively challenged students, because the general accountability tests are not appropriate typically for kids that have significant cognitive disabilities. And what they're aimed to do is just show what kids can do that have those disabilities within ELA, math, and science. And then the forward test is the Wisconsin-based one. It really measures how your kids are doing around 4 performance levels, from developing up through advanced in math and English, grades 3 through 8, so every year, in science 4th and 8th, and in social studies 4th, 8th, and 10th. So again, what I'm trying to say is there's a whole bunch of things, and there's reasons for all this. I've been watching the sausage made on this pretty much my career, because I was around when we didn't have any of this stuff, and it's been built over time. But I would say overall, always for good reasons. Like DLM showed up because how could you have a kid with significant cognitive disabilities take the test? It's not appropriate for them. So that got created over time, and it's a good thing. And how could you only be thinking about achievement when you have kids that are, you care about how fast you grow kids, not just whether kids are started at a certain level or not. So all these things over time I've watched, they've been for good reason, good evidence-based reasons. And then also, besides those tests I just mentioned, of ACT, DLM, and Forward, that all come into your overall 5-star rating, you also have some other things that are important, that people care about and matter, like absenteeism, what's your attendance like? What's your enrollment like? Do you have kids graduate at a high rate or not? Those sorts of things. So those also factor in your overall rating that we just celebrated a minute ago. So if you ever look at this, and I know you had this available since November, I know that you have it available. I was chatting with David ahead of time. It's available, has been since November. You can find it on your district's website for not just the district, but for each school. Because remember, this stuff, you get this each November, typically it's November when DPI releases it to the public. You'll have it for your district, and then you have it for each school. Right now we're talking tonight just about the district. But that, all the schools feed into what I'm sharing today. The thing you care most about, or the people typically care most about, is what you see at the very bottom. This is the top half of the cover page. And the people typically care about, okay, what's our overall score? In this case, it's 88.6. And what is that in the stars rating? 1 through 5 star. And again, that's where you see it. A few other things you might notice if you look and see if you can see my cursor. Yeah, you can. All right, so, you can also typically get some good information about any school or system. Like you had over 4,300 students last year enrolled. 3/4 or more are white. Next biggest demographic group is Latino at about 9–10%. The next group is Asian, around 8%. You're pretty typical with 11% of your students with disabilities would typically be receiving an IEP. Economically disadvantaged, you're pretty much where most Waukesha County districts are, but that is very much less students experiencing poverty than most of the state. Most of the state is more like 35, 40%, and around here it's typically like you see here, ranging from typically 8% to about 14%. The outlier for here is Waukesha with about 36%. If you just move to West Dallas, it'd be 67% and forward. So again, that's something that stands out a lot. I point that out because there's been for decades a high correlation between poverty levels and educational outcomes. So that's why I will show how I'll make a note of how that shows up in your priority weights here in a moment. And then you have some English language learners. That means they don't speak, students who don't speak English first, and they need to learn that, but not a lot. You have some. Okay, so far so good. How we doing? Is that all right? So I'm getting into the weeds without going too deep. I'm trying to thread the needle here like Goldilocks, not too much, not too little, just right. So if I start seeing your eyes drift, I'm going to take that as feedback. So let's look at this. So again, you got this overall score. I mean, so one thing just to know is the overall, like there's so many pieces to this, but the big number is that number and where that overall comes. And ultimately, there are four priority areas in every system in every school in the state. And they're the same four areas, just how they're weighted is differently. So the bottom half, let's say the southern hemisphere, if you will, pretty much in every system, 25% of your overall score is going to be around target group outcomes. I'll talk about what that is in a second, in a minute. And the other 25% will be around on track to graduation, college readiness, if you will. So again, the bottom half is pretty much consistent if you looked at any of the 363 school systems. What varies is the top half. And it varies pretty much by the number of kids that are experiencing poverty. Kids that qualify for free reduced lunch is an example. So the higher the lower your rate of economically disadvantaged, the higher level of achievement in your weighting. I'll give you an example. Waukesha is pretty much almost 25-25 here because they have around the state average of experience. They have more like 37% or something like that. So again, they have a much higher level of economically disadvantaged students. So that means they have their weightings are different. Okay, so far so good. So let's talk about each of those four priority areas so you can understand that. So each of them have a 0 to 100 score. So you can kind of see, like you had an 87.3 achievement rating out of 100. Growth was 78.4. And I'll get into all the details in this a little bit, but just know they're each 100 points. The gray bar shows how you did versus the state average, or in this case, it doesn't look gray. Maybe yours is like blue, but you see, like for example, you had on English language arts, you had an 83, and the state was 63.9. So where you see that, that's how your kids did versus the state average. The exception is target group, because target group isn't in relation to the state. Target group is instead designed to be help schools, or in this case, school systems, see the gaps between your lowest 25% performing students versus your general population in the areas you see. And so that's the idea. And so whatever your score is, again, like you had, so to get your overall score, like this is important. Remember, this is the bottom half of your cover sheet, and it'll be the same for your schools. You would take 87.3, and you would calculate that to the weighting. In your case, 30.25, and you could take growth 78.4, and in your case, you could take it times the percentage, the weight here. So that's why you see some differences, because again, the weighting, remember, goes back to poverty levels essentially, and then you'll see that's the kind of way they use it. And there's good reasons for all this, I believe. So I'm going to stop there, but that's your overall, like what you see without getting too lost into all the mechanics of it. Okay. A key thing that you should also know is value add, and value add matters like how you're doing for all your kids. Are you giving every student a pathway to educational excellence, like expect excellence, I see it, or giving every student a pathway toward that? This is outstanding slide. This is a huge celebration for your district. I don't see this too often. I'm going to tell you what I see here. First off, let's just read the box. What does value add mean? Value added scores range from 0 to 6. Higher scores mean greater positive impact. A score of 3.0 is average. The line you see here in language arts is what an average, this is what a year's growth should look like. We would expect a year's growth to be here. If you have more than 3.0, that means your kids in that group experience more than a year's growth. And that means you're doing better than the state. in that way. And let me tell you a little bit more about value add. Value add uses a complex statistical technique with a straightforward concept. Basically, let's compare apples to apples. That's what I would say it is. It's trying to take kids, like you have a unique context. Your context is somewhat described by what you see here in your demographics. You know, these sorts of things. So kids that are from like your system, your schools, how are your kids doing versus kids like them in similar contexts around the state of Wisconsin? So again, I feel like it's not just like saying how we're doing against district acts, it's like how are we doing against systems like ours or schools like ours, because that's a higher standard for you to demonstrate value add in this case. And so, and I always think like my biggest mantra as an educator, I still consider myself a teacher, even though I've been an administrator, teaching administrators and growing that for 25 years or so, 30 years now. I think that the biggest thing is that you should get a year's growth for a year's time. That's what I mean. I want at least that. And your kids who have the biggest gap you should try to do your best to accelerate. They get more than a year's growth, you hope. And so that's why I celebrate this. So what does this actually say? There's a lot of numbers here. Oops, let me go back. So it says for all your students who took some level of English language arts, remember the tests we went through earlier, Forward, ACT, all that. 3.7, overall, your kids had a 3.7, more than a year's growth. But look at every demographic group. Now, you'll notice there's a few that you don't have a number for. That's where you had too small of a sample size to provide it, because they won't do that. Because otherwise, if it's down to 3 kids, you're basically telling the world what those 3 kids got for scores, and it wouldn't be humane. So it has to be a certain sample size for you to get a number. But you can see most of your groups are big enough where you actually have a number here. So I want to particularly celebrate, our state is getting hammered for years, and maybe rightfully so, right? For biggest gaps in America, one of the biggest between white and black students, right? I shouldn't say maybe so, we should be. I mean, we should do better for all our kids. In this case, your highest subgroup is black students. Yes, sir. Yeah.
You said 6 is the highest. It seems like it's good that we're there, but is anyone at 6, or is 6 like the unattainable?
I haven't seen a 6, but maybe it's probably there. I don't get into this. I have a good background on this, but it isn't where I live. So there, if you look, Mitchell, that'd be a great question. Like there's probably not a 0 either, or a 6. I mean, but I mean, yeah. Well, no, I've seen high numbers, but I don't know about the 6. Yeah, that's a good question. There'd have to be a follow-up on that. And but again, I'd celebrate that, particularly, again, the biggest gap in the state, you're actually showing your strongest value add in that demographic group. Again, what a celebration. And it isn't just for a few kids. I mean, there's 34 lives there. And then if you look at on mathematics, again, a lot of times Asian students, that's a high subgroup for that. That's very common. But I look at another one here, and again, I celebrate all this. But I look at English language learners. Again, one of the other bigger gaps, and that's your biggest demographic group in particular that you see as well with really high value add, high growth. So let's talk about each of the 4 areas. Remember, again, let's just remind ourselves what they are. We're going to talk about achievement, we're going to talk about growth, we're going to talk about target group, and on track. So you can understand, because all those things factor into your overall accountability. So this is your overall accountability score. So again, this is what we're talking about right here. The thing that led to your 5-star. This is where it all comes together in the one macro metric. This is the one, if you care about branding and what people pay attention to, this is probably the one. There's a lot of detail to it, but people, okay, what were we, a 5-star, were we a 4-star? How are we ranked to others, all that sort of thing. You see it here. Again, and so 88.6 and 89, you see the top 2 there, the systems. So that's wonderful. Again, a lot of celebration around that. A couple things I'd say on that, that item is that know that up to DPI will use up to 3 years of data where they have it. So when you see this number, it's actually your last 3 years. It's not just this year, even though it's the most up to date. So just know that, that's again, I think a good thing, because it used to be like, okay, we had a good year, bad year. We actually we know trends are better, helpful to provide information. So one thing is when you see this is showing your last 3 years' work. And it also, the way they do this, and I also applaud them for this, your most recent of the 3 years is the one that has more weight. So you get a trend and you also get that. So this is the best of both worlds from my view as someone who wants to use data for information to make better decisions as a leader, because I see trend data and I see our most recent data weighted here, and it's not just a flip in the screen. So that's the sort of thing. So just know that. So again, even more reason to celebrate. This isn't just you got lucky this year, by no means. So let's talk about achievement then. Achievement is, again, the top or the left is where you ended up this year with achievement. And again, you're very strong, again, among the most competitive and high-achieving county in the state. As we just said, 6 of 24 of the top systems are in your county, and you're right in the thick of it. ELA is further down than math, but ELA, from my view, as an achievement, is, there's going to be variance. It's not weak, it's just lower down than some things. And again, especially when you think about how that feeds into overall. But again, the whole point of these systems are to give you sense to see what strengths you can build on and some areas that you could hone in on. And this might be an area you could hone in on and just try to notice, because there's some variance, but again, overall, very strong achievement. And let me go back to the one other thing about achievement. This summarizes all students on grades 3 through 11 who take the forward, the pre-ACT, the ACT with writing, and DLM across 4 areas. And that's where you've seen that before, where the 4 areas are, the lowest performers on that would be developing, then approaching, then meeting, then advance. So that's what this pulling all that together into one achievement score. So from all those levels, all those assess, and that's what they're trying to do here. In growth, this is about the purpose of this priority area is to give schools and districts a single measure that summarizes how rapidly your students are growing year to year. So you should be able to ask the question here, and I do when I look at this, how is the pace of our students learning doing versus the pace of student learning across Wisconsin? And again, overall strong growth, the pace of learning is solid here. You can see on the left is the overall, and then in the middle you see it for particularly with ELA growth and for mathematics growth. So again, this is one of the things you see 2 hands. So maybe in the previous slide you saw achievement in ELA was a little lower, but it's still very competitive. But growth, you're really closing, really growing kids. So again, it's just another way of looking at important areas of learning. Another thing to know about growth, because this comes up, and again, this is something that's happened over time, which I'm thankful for, because I remember we were part of these discussions. Could you make it so so there used to be a thing, kids would show up for a month to a system, take the test, had almost no learning in the system, and then yet, how'd that factor into overall? And especially for places where it has a lot of up and down and mobility in the community. So when you see statistics here, for example, growth, and in other areas, a thing called full academic year applies. So students need to be with you for a full academic year for their data to be included. And again, typically you also need 2 years of test taking for it to also be included. So again, that gives you a truer sense of kids who are in your program, how are they doing, just so you know that. So it isn't just, again, that would be another reason maybe to discount the data, but actually that's been taken into account because of full academic year and 2 years of data 2 years of testing to be included in the data that you have. That's why sometimes you'll see the number of kids tested doesn't seem to quite with the enrollment. That's probably because they were here for a year, that sort of thing, where they didn't quite hit it, so that's why they aren't counted with your scores, and there might be a discrepancy with that, but that's for good reasons. Target group outcomes. This is one you crushed in a good way, and target group outcomes are, let me just kind of get to my notes here. This priority area examines multiple measures for students in the bottom quartile or the bottom 25% of your results. It's from the previous year. So remember, this is 24-25 data we're looking at. So this would have been the students the previous year, 23-24. The students that were in the bottom 25%, bottom quartile, that returned to school last year. Those kids at any level are your target group students. And those are the kids across our state who we want to find a way that they are not right now performing. We want to make sure they can get, and if there's gaps to close, we can accelerate. That's the idea. Again, this priority area examines multiple measures for students in that bottom quartile performance. And then what the 4 criteria used here are, how are they achieving? How are they growing? What's their attendance or graduation like? And is there some chronic absenteeism? And if, any of these things, you can go back to what I shared earlier. Because just take a look here. If you see target group right now on the screen, you see the 4 criteria I just showed. You can see how, for example, there, you can see how they did with achievement, growth, chronic absenteeism, and graduation. So it can come back, this is again, the bottom half of your cover page. You can see some of these things. I'm just trying to go even a little bit deeper without getting you lost here, hopefully. And hopefully going back and forth and kind of help you make those connections a little bit. One last thing is on track to graduation. Again, very strong. On track to graduation score, you're among the top. On the one on the left is your overall score that showed up in your accountability. Then the middle one is how you did overall for all your students, which is amazing, 98.9. And then New Berlin, and then you see New Berlin in the second slot on the far right where it's for the target group. So even look at how close it is even for the students who are most likely maybe to drop out, withdraw, and disengage. Again, some very strong things. So again, overall, very strong. A couple other things, and until we kind of sum this up and get to some questions. A few things, like I think about this with data, and if you want to go deeper with data, I think this is my suggestions, and I work with a lot of systems with strategic planning and things like that. I say when you look about, you want to look at yourself and examine yourself, thoroughly. You want to think about data as information. Because you can have a lot, that whole acronym you've probably heard, DRIP, where you're data rich and information poor. We're swimming in data, but we don't know what to do with it. You don't want that. So if you have a data point, okay, that's maybe giving me some information. Like what you see here in the dots on the left is unfortunately, that kind of got created with COVID, because what happened with COVID was we had a year or two where it wasn't testing, and then it didn't allow us to continue trends. Like we couldn't compare, so that's why you see a gap here. So basically there were some trends before that time, but they aren't connected to what we currently are doing because COVID, if you remember, we didn't have testing. It broke up the system. So that was where data is a point. Data is more helpful when you can see trends, right? And you can see how we do compared to this, and that's why we do a lot of these things. Now, what got disrupted with that is that we had forward cut scores get updated. So that you probably have paid attention to that. So our DPI had changed about a year ago now, the cut scores. So let's imagine a student's taking a test. I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say if I take this math test, to get a perfect score would be 200. And in the past, maybe if I get 112 points on this test, that might be I'm moving from the lowest stage, to the second stage. Let's just say that number, 112. I'm just making up a number. So that would be the cut score. If you got 113, now you move from the lowest level to the next level. That's the cut. Well, those change. So some of the numbers, maybe now instead of 113, it's 111 or something to move that stage. So they changed. So sometimes when people see the trends, which are usually helpful, they wonder, like, okay, if we're seeing upward trends, like you are here, like you're seeing upward trends in everything, overall, everything except for growth, which is kind of stable if you look. The question is that basically a product of just the cut scores being repositioned? And so what I asked the team to do, and I thank for Danielle and David and others that helped with this. So one thing we just suggest at this moment in time is that you look at how are you doing relative to what's the net change. And so what you see here is, it's another way of showing this, and we've just had it here for overall score, for achievement, and for growth. And again, the overall is the thing that we were looking at earlier, your 5-star rating. And here what we're doing is we're looking at how'd you do in, for example, your overall score, 88.6 to last year. Oh, that's improved, okay. But the big thing we want to look for is how much different is that to the state, to the rest of the state compared to the year before, because you can't control if the cut score has changed, but every district like you had to experience the very same cut score changes. So this year it makes sense to think about how your changes are relative to the rest of the state. Does that make sense? So even though so when people ask, like, okay, great, we see growth in our trends, but in transparency, that's because the cut scores change or because we actually got better, you can say, I think this way, I look at your data and say, well, you've grown the difference between you and the state in overall achievement in the last year, even though everyone had the same cut score differences. So that therefore you've gotten, your move upward is actually showing improvement, not just that the cut scores change. So I just want to make that point too, because that's often a question people have. So, so what does this all mean? And I want to say one thing too, is I love that you have also the integrity and the transparency to say, not only do we have data points, we have data trends, And we try to contextualize those trends. So we can show how are those trends relative to this. So you have almost all your data is contextualized against the most competitive districts in the state or among them. And so you're holding yourself up to a standard that I think is important to be the best you can and expect excellence and all that. So as a guy who's been living in this work for a long time, particularly in Waukesha County for 26 years and around the systems around you and around the state, here are a few things why I think what we just walked through, what it means and why it matters. So big picture, broad overview. What you have here is a comprehensive, balanced view of your impact on student learning. I used to think that I wanted high achievement, and that was the one thing, of course, because that's going to help you get every door open, and that's important, absolutely. I mean, obviously, my life's around that. I have a PhD and all this stuff, but I know now that I want a more comprehensive, balanced view of that. So when I was at Elmbrook, for example, I mentioned 30 years ago, we realized that we had a lot of kids who were achieving well, but we weren't growing them. They weren't growing very much. They could pretty much just show up and do just fine. And we weren't adding a lot of value to some of those kids. We wanted to know where it was and what we could do about it. We also cared about the kids who are struggling the most, needed not just a year's growth, they needed us to close gaps, which meant they need more than a year's growth. So we need to understand that. You get the idea. And that's why we started this at Elmbrook. We had a thing called some dashboards we did around each group in our schools. At Muskegon, we built a balanced scorecard, much like you see here. It was very similar. We had growth. We call them subgroups, not target group. And I think Muskegon still has it. I don't work there anymore, but I believe in all these sorts of things around readiness. Because again, it gives you a more comprehensive, balanced view. I really think overall, you care about all four of those areas, and they all matter: achievement, growth, target group, and college career readiness. Market analysis. The other thing is, again, that you are strong and growing within a region that's long known for educational excellence. Waukesha County has a great education story to tell, and you're in the midst of making that happen. And you also have things to continue to work on, which is great, and you are. 3 types of data are there. So when you think about those 4 areas, I don't know if your lagging data means it's helpful, but it told us we've already crossed, we're here, and that lagging data tells us what happened. And then there's leading data that kind of helps us get data to know how to go move as we go. And then there's legacy, things that were all said and done. It's did we change lives or not? I think you can think about those 4 priority areas as one of these. Lagging data is achievement data. How did our kids do? Were they advanced? Were they meeting? But that's always in the past. Whereas growing kids, growth data shows us information, and especially when you get into FastBridge and AimsWeb, some of your local measures that get into this, it actually shows you how kids are growing right now, so we can see where we are actually. It gives you more leading information, more to help inform good decisions about improvement and programs and supports for kids, what have you. And so that's target group and growth. And then legacy, to me, is college career readiness. Are we able to find, help every student find a meaningful path to them to be a contributor to society, be successful, contributing adult? That's college career readiness. And are we having kids ready to pursue well any pathway that grabs their heart's attention? So those are a few things, big picture. I think also what it means, it matters through 3 analogies. I like you can judge a tree by its fruits. I'm a man of faith. I love that. It means a lot to me. I think the best predictor of future performance is past success. And you've been doing this. This is nothing new. You have a heritage of success here, and you're building on that. And then I get into the business analogy. And I'm a consultant. I have my own business on the side when I can fit it in. And I know that if I want to be successful in any business, and I do it my own, I have to grow my business, because I don't want to just be good at what I do, which I hope I am, but I need to grow that business, because otherwise it stagnates. And I think you want to think about this as well. If we're in education, we want to have high achievement, we want to all these things, but we need to grow our ability to serve particularly the most challenged kids. And then medical analogy, you can have an autopsy or a physical exam. We used to talk about this all the time when I was earlier. We say achievement gives you a good way of how did we do, but you're looking at the patient and you're looking at their old work. Where more and more of these multi-measures give you a way to actually get the indicators about how to serve the people right now and to make a more adept kind of leading movement. And then lastly, why it matters, I think to any board commitments that's deep into the work, I mean, you are demonstrating to your families huge value add. Go back to, I mean, again, there are very few systems, I don't have a number for you, but I look at enough of these to know this is fairly rare air, where you get into, here's where it is. Again, you get into, like, you are showing value add, not just for all the the big groups, but for every subgroup. And then, you know, that's a heck of a statement to be able to share for your commitment to families. And I think you also, when you get into target groups, particularly your ability to accelerate growth for the kids who are the lowest performers traditionally, again, that shows the commitment to expect excellence here that I see through that. I also get into, you know, growing and preparing all the students we serve. Again, that's the target group piece, as I mentioned. And I get into this last piece about responsible stewardship, you know, living your mission. I see it lived. You're safeguarding the district brand and value. I mean, I think in general, again, where you are with your 5 stars now in every school, and then ultimately with your continuous improvement and thoughtful oversight. So as Joe mentioned, Mr. Garza mentioned, I've had the honor of working with them, with him and his team, and I can assure you they're not resting on their laurels. They're working hard. Their schools are working hard. Your schools are working hard to, you know, really build off your strengths and get better at the areas where you see some opportunities to continue to have more impact. So there's a lot there. I hope it's been helpful to unpack some of this. I think we have a little time for some questions maybe. And so happy to take some.
Yeah, we don't have much for closed session, so we can spend a little bit of time here if needed.
I have a question. So as a school board, in any district, what should a school board look at on a state report card to, you know, like, what should we be looking at to help the district get better, or what to focus on, I guess,
Yeah, that's great.
as a school board?
I think one thing I would suggest is again, just kind of understand, all right, let me just go this way, is that you have just the structure here, like we try to do. I think the overall, knowing that every district, like you, has a cover sheet here, and this cover sheet can tell you a lot. I basically, you know, if you think about what I just said, Amy, I went into a lot of detail to describe the cover here. And so I would just start with those things. And then you could also do the same for each of the 6 schools. You'd see a lot of similar strengths, because again, the schools, but sometimes districts have, like, we have a lot of strengths and we have a school that's really struggling. Like you don't have that right now. And from my view, I mean, you have, every school has things to work on, every system has things to work on, sure, absolutely. But I would start with always the cover sheet for your system and school. And if you see something pop up that you're wondering about, then get into the weeds, because I just showed you a few screenshots of things that would be further down into the reports. But honestly, that's what I do. I usually just go to the cover sheet, and then I know where to drill down. And I hope you have enough now to kind of know how you could do that, and even just to know that we have a similar thing for each school and the system. And I hope you also can tell, like, if you look at systems, like you want to compare apples to apples, make sure you're understanding, like, again, know that the context around students experiencing poverty varies this a lot, like you know that now, right? And you would also know some things around where you see growth and value add. I think you'd have a lot of things here too, where if you ever saw, like, sometimes we'll see this page, and this page will be in every report card. That'd be another place I would go and find, like, is there anything that's way below the line? What's that telling us? And you could look by school or by system. So those are a few things. That's a great question. I hope that helps a little bit, kind of know where to go. Big picture, and then figure out where to dive in. And, you know, lean on your people here that you have. They're thoughtful, they know this stuff. You could just, I think, help with just kind of knowing what you might want to know more about.
Any more questions? Nothing? Okay, I hope I can formulate my question.
Sure.
So if you go back to that, like, cover sheet, and you're mentioning that the priority areas are weighted differently. It's weighted differently by each school district. Has there a different weight, or is it per school?
So again, the district will be kind of a combination of all the 6 schools in the makeup of that. So you're seeing this is the big umbrella, and then each one might, but they have similar 4 priority areas of weight.
Okay, so I understand it's the same 4 priorities, but every district is going to have theirs weighted differently. So for instance, some school districts might weight growth more so than other districts?
So what happens is typically every of the 4, the bottom 2 are almost always 25% each. So that'll be common across all the systems, pretty much. The variance will be in the top 2, and that's basically, and I'll give you an example to make the point here in a second. So it's basically the connection of your percentage of economically disadvantaged, which is basically how many students qualify for free reduced lunch. It's also a factor, 175% of the, I think, the federal poverty wage. These are some of the qualifying things, something like that. So that gets into your percentage here. So when this is low, like this, again, you might not think that's low. Relative to the state, it's low. And so that's why when you see a percentage, a lower economically disadvantaged percentage, you'll see a higher amount of weight towards achievement in your system. So let me give you an example. Like for you, you see here, it's 14% economically disadvantaged students, and then the state has 39% of the weight of your overall score being on achievement. In contrast, I have it here, just in case this question came up. In contrast, Waukesha has 39%, so pretty much 3 times the amount of poverty. And their achievement level is at 23%. And they're close to about the state average. I don't know for exactly, but in my head, I think it makes sense. Like it's state average. Last I saw was maybe 30-some% poverty. So those are the folks who have like 25 growth, 25 achievement, and then there are other systems like West Allis, who has 68% economic disadvantage. They are here. They have I have it here as well, just as an example. 45%. On growth and 5% on achievement. So when you get that far into poverty, and again, the reason for that, they're trying to find a fair way, the state is trying to find a fair way to show what research has shown for decades is the unfortunate correlation, not that you accept it, but you try to work against it, but again, this high correlation of poverty and educational outcomes. And this is, again, over time, they've created these weights to try to help everyone find an appropriate way to keep on focusing on good work and dealing with the context that you're working yourself in. And because when they used to do it differently, what honestly would do is and I worked in some of these systems, and I'm from poor, I grew up in poor systems in the state. I won't bother to say which were there, but both of them now would be high poverty systems I grew up in. I was a working class kid, all that. But before they did the weights like this, you could, not that we were doing it, but a system that had high SES could coast a lot of ways, because they would just be compared like everybody else. Compare yourselves to other contexts with 3 to 6 times more poverty, and you probably would be better with outcomes. And they're trying to find a way to make this, again, fair across the state with all the variances of context. So the one you asked, Janet, that's a good question, because that's a key part of you understanding this, and it's really linked a lot to the metric around economically disadvantaged. So again, bottom line is the bottom 2 are typically consistent. The top 2 vary a lot around poverty. If this would change greatly in your community, you would see some variance in the weights, and that's how they do it. It's really a function of who's in your community in terms of economically disadvantaged status.
Okay. Any more questions? That's it?
Can I just say then, and wrap it up, again, I hope congratulations on really strong work. Again, I get a chance to work with these folks now, and I've known of you. This is the most I ever got to work in with folks. I've been working with Elmbrook the last 4 years pretty closely as well. And so there's some really thoughtful work, some of the very best work in the state's going on around cycles of work. And I appreciate your support of that, because I think you're strong, and I expect you're going to continue to see strong results and improving results. So again, thanks for the honor of the time. Appreciate it. Dr. Garza?
Thank you. All right. So now we're going to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer, a second by Mr. Seidel. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. This part of the meeting is adjourned. Okay, so we'll move into. It's now 6:50 PM, and a quorum of members is present, so the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby?
Here.
Mr. Helmer?
Here.
Ms. Konick? Ms. Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Seidel?
Here.
Ms. Spindler? Here. Mr. Zelinski?
Here.
I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
I move to adjourn into closed session pursuant to section 19.85, 1C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the approval of closed session minutes of January 26th, and B, the employment performance and compensation matters pertaining to staff.
Seconded.
I have a motion by Ms. Crosby and a second by Mr. Zelinski. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski? Mr. Helmer?
Yes.
Ms. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Seidel?
Yes.
Ms. Spindler?
Yes.
We are moving into closed session, return to open session around 7 o'clock. It is now 7:16 PM, and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For all those who are able, please rise. And now for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by providing the agenda to the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. Do we have any privilege of the floor this evening?
No.
All right, I do not have a message, so we'll move on to the administrative team report.
I did want to just share that we may be looking at another speaker for the board, so we just got done with a work session, and I am working with Will Flanders, who's a research analyst with the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. He's been following the Act 20 literacy work, and I'm still trying to solidify to see if he may be like part 2 of the 2-part series of digging into the data. Other than that, I guess at this point, I'll hand it over to Peyton.
Good evening. Eisenhower students are starting the semester strong, just wrapping up exams 2 weeks ago. Our English 11 classes are learning how to write poems, and our orchestra at the end of last month, every orchestra in the district played together at Stringfest in the Fieldhouse at West. Next week, we'll have a career day where all 7 through 12 students will have the option to select 3 different jobs they want to go into or fields they want to go into and get to learn from that. And our juniors have been working hard on ACT prep as it's at the start of next month. Our clubs have been active too, with HOSA running a blood drive last Friday and finishing up their winter carnival in January. DECA had over 20 state qualifiers from districts at Homestead, and they're also selling serenades where members of the Eisenhower Choir will go and sing to a person of choice. Eisenhower Theater will have Bye Bye Birdie over the next 2 weekends, producing 6 shows. And our girls basketball team has won 4 out of their last 5 games. Our annual Ike West rivalry, our girls teams won both games. Ike Cheer just got back from their national competition in Orlando, Florida. And Ike Dance concluded their season by being state champs in Division IV Pom and placed 3rd in Division II Jazz. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we have our consent agenda next up. It includes the notice, the approval of minutes of the board meeting of January 26th, and then the 2026 Young People's Continental Congress field trip application. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and second by Mr. Helmer to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. On to the regular agenda. We have the discuss approve financial statement audit for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025. Any
I'll hand it
sorry.
over to Patrick.
So we have our representative from Baker Tilly here with us tonight, Paul Franz. Paul has been leading our financial audit for the last 2 years. We appreciate the work that he's done in the district, and I will turn it over to Paul. All of the documents that he's going to reference are in board books for you. And as soon as you approve, I'll forward them to David that he'll post on the website.
Perfect. Thank you. Again, Paul Franz, principal of Baker Tilly in Milwaukee. Privileged to be with you tonight. All good news to share with you this evening. We did complete our financial and single audit for the district as of June 30, 2025, issued those reports in early December. The district received an unmodified opinion, also known as a clean bill of health. That's the highest level of assurance that you can receive from an external auditor and ultimately the outcome you look to hear. What that opinion means is that within the financial statement document, all necessary disclosures have been included within there, that all accounting principles have been adopted and applied consistently year over year by management, and that the document itself is free of material misstatements. So again, all what you're looking to hear when you have an external auditor look at the financial records and ultimately the financial statements of the district. In relation to the single audit, because the district receives more than $750,000 of federal grant dollars in a fiscal year and spends that, the district is subject to a federal and a state single audit. Also issued an unmodified opinion over that. The single audit looks at the compliance of the grant dollars received and make sure ultimately that they're spent in conjunction with the rules that were in place to receive those dollars. Again, no findings to note from that audit, and ultimately led to the clean opinion on that. Financial health of the district is strong. You're in line with your general fund policy of more than 10% of your expenditures. It was 32% at June 30, 2025. So again, strong financial position there. No concerns to note. We received nothing but cooperation from management throughout the audit process. They were ready for us when we came in, gave us good financial data to start with, and ultimately were very kind and easy to navigate through any questions that we had. And so we didn't have any material journal entries or concerns that came up during the audit process. And the best thing I can tell you from that is that means that you have good financial data throughout the year, that you're not waiting for your auditor to come in, fix the books to give you good information that's 6 or 7 months old by the time you get it. You have it at your fingertips by management, and that's the best thing I can give you in a statement, is that, again, you have what you need to make the decisions that you need to. So with that, I'll pause there. Certainly go into more depth if you have items of concern or things that you would like to pick my brain on, but nothing else to specifically add immediately.
So this is the board's audit of our books. And, given the information provided, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We recommend approval of the audit as presented.
So move.
All right, so we have a motion, of a second.
Seconded.
All right. So I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Mr. Helmer to approve the financial statement audit for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025 as presented. Is there any discussion? Then all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can, I'd like to thank a few people for the financial audit. First and foremost, my comptroller, is the equivalent of finance director, Crystal Reed. She does an absolutely fantastic job keeping on top of all of the district revenues and expenditures. We have, I believe, the best financial department in southeastern Wisconsin, from our accountants to our APs, our accounts payable, not associate principals. I believe we've got the best of the best, and I appreciate the board allowing me to build such a strong team. I also want to thank Paul with Baker Tilly. If you remember, a couple of years ago, our auditors dropped us the week we were going to send them or request information for the upcoming audit. And Baker Tilly stepped up to the plate. They were the only group that stepped up to the plate. And we really appreciate the way they work with us. As a matter of fact, they are the first audit team that we have given access to our auditor access to our financial programs, and they grabbed that information and ran with it. We maybe have auditors on site for 2 or 2.5 days, where this used to be like 3 weeks. So I appreciate all the work.
Fantastic, thank you. All right. Next, we have discuss approve the 2026-27 board meeting calendar.
Did we actually have a vote, Janet?
Yeah,
on
we
that?
voted.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
My apologies. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I was just giving, Patrick, like, attaboy, Patrick, way to go.
All right, so do I have a motion for the 2026-27 board meeting calendar?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel, second by Mr. Helmer to approve. Is there any discussion? And all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. And then we do have an item from closed session.
I move to approve the employment services report as presented.
I have a motion by Ms. Spindler, a second by Ms. Crosby to approve the employment services report. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Our future meetings and dates. So we have board meetings generally held the second and fourth Mondays, beginning at 7 o'clock p.m. here in this conference room in the district offices, unless otherwise noted. The next one is February 23rd, then we have March 9th and March 23rd. Other important dates to remember is February 16th, and then March 13th are staff in service days. There are no school on those days. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel, a second by Mr. Helmer to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.